Okay, here we go. Well, lots happened since I did the last live stream podcast, question and answer session. A lot has happened. Six Nations has been and done, and we can debate the pros and cons of that tournament and where teams did things well and where things did things badly, and we can discuss the Six Nations in there. And of course, we've had the takeover of Team Sky by Britain's richest man, and it will be called Team Ineos from May, and that's come a year earlier than expected. There's obviously the build up to the Euro 2020 qualifiers this weekend, and Callum Hudson-Odoi's inclusion, which has created a bit of a stir. There's been a whole host of things. I've obviously done a lot of NRL videos, so there's a lot of NRL stuff that I've done over the last couple of days. There's not been a lot of sports news the last few days. Other rugby union news: the Sunwolves. This is their last season, so they've only going to do 3 seasons in Super Rugby, and then they're going to be out of Super Rugby. And there are those saying, "Well, that's mismanagement of Super Rugby again," and absolutely, Super Rugby is under a lot of criticism for the fact that the Sunwolves will not be participating from next season on the eve of the World Cup as well. So that's been quite damaging for the Super Rugby brand down in the Southern Hemisphere. We've also had the news that the Great Britain Rugby League Lions will return for a tour of New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, and Tonga at the end of this year as well, but no test match with New Zealand. So that's interesting to note that is happening. My internet is just not great, so apologies if the stream isn't looking that good. The internet is struggling, so there's a lot of things to talk about. The big news obviously is Wales' Grand Slam and the ongoing issues within the Welsh domestic game in the Pro League and the future of the Welsh clubs going forward. That's a big concern. There's a lot of issues over the ongoing crisis within Welsh rugby. The PRB have now come out and said that the regions as they are will stay as they are for this season coming up. There is going to be no merger, and the plans for a North Welsh team are put further on hold. So that's interesting to see how that develops and where that leads, and the ongoing discussions there. There's a change to the centralized contracts. There's changes with pay bands. So that's going to be interesting to see how that develops over the next 12 months, because it still leaves uncertainty going forward. There's still no guaranteed certainty post the end of next season. So all the Welsh Union have done is kick the problem down the road for a year. They haven't actually resolved the ongoing issues within the game at the top level. So that, I think, undermines any efforts the Welsh do at the World Cup and going forward into next year's Six Nations. Obviously, we've seen the World Rugby Initiative to have this international rugby calendar changed, which is met with criticism from many quarters, and not everyone is happy with that. There are threats of a boycott from the World Cup from Tonga, Samoa, and Fiji. Namibia aren't necessarily 100% financially secure going into the World Cup themselves. So there's all that to consider. So there is a lot going on. There's a lot to talk about on that front. So rugby union's in a bit of flux at the moment, and it's interesting because obviously we have the World Cup 6 months away. We've had similar issues within football before the Russia World Cup. There was issues about coming up with football on the eve of the tournament. So it's going to be interesting to see how well rugby respond to what's happens in World Rugby circles. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens going forward from there. Obviously, I've done a lot of NRL videos. I'm very glad that the Rugby League in Australia is back for another season. It's looking very interesting already after the first weekend. There's a lot of interesting things, obviously, that have happened, and of course, there's a lot of controversy off the field with the NRL in this off season. Been a very controversial off season. A lot of scandal has come out in this off season, and there's a lot of players who are in hot water. Of course, the Ben Barba incident is obviously fresh in people's minds. the Jack de Belin no fault stand down policy debate is going on, and what's happening there. There are other players also under hot water, and the debate is Todd Greenberg the right man to take the NRL forward? Can the NRL recover from all this off field scandal? They're in this new era, as they call it. They've redone the logo. They're trying to attract new fans to games. They're taking more games on the road. So that's going to be interesting to see how that all transpires as the season goes on, and we'll have to look at the NRL in more detail going forward, because there is this backdrop of scandal coming into this season. And I don't think the NRL can have another off-season or another season like that with player scandal. I think that'd be very damaging for the NRL's brand and taking the NRL forward, because it is the best rugby league competition in the world. But the damage being caused to its image and its brand by the amount of off-season antics to do with players is highly damaging going forward. And I've looked at that in some videos. The Ben Barber, life deregistration has been very divisive. And the issues around that, and were the NRL right to deregister him for life, considering that players like Jack de Belin, for example, are on the no fault stand down policy, which has created a lot of debate. And the Dylan Napa situation's created some debate. There's other similar scandals as well. I mean, Greg Inglis got a drink drive conviction, so there is a lot to be said about the state of play at the moment within the NRL and within the off-field culture. Super League's had its own issues with players doing silly things as well in the last couple of years. So Super League has also got to look how the NRL deals with things going forward. Rugby unions have players misbehave. Obviously, Cipriani over last year misbehaved a fair bit and got himself in a bit of trouble. The question mark remains, should he be in the England squad for the World Cup? Had he been in the Six Nations squad, would the result of the Six Nations been different? Would the England-Scotland game have been any different? Would the England-Wales game been any different? That's a question that's being asked a fair bit at the moment, and that will rage on until the World Cup is done and dusted. Should Cipriani be in the team? That debate's been going on for a while, and Eddie Jones, being a strict disciplinarian, doesn't tolerate ill discipline. Cipriani is historically ill disciplined. It's an interesting one. On a footballing note, I've looked at a couple of issues. Bolton Wanderers have 2 weeks to avoid administration if they can get a sale through. Otherwise, they face administration and a 12-point deduction. Obviously, they've had 6 High Court appearances in 16 months. Ken Anderson's put the club up for sale. That's interesting watching that one. Birmingham City have their own administration or point deduction worries that apparently they breached a transfer ruling that they had against them. So Birmingham City are in hot water. That could put them in the relegation battle in the Championship, which could throw the whole thing up in the air. Accrington Stanley's owner has come out and says that he's deeply concerned about the current state of play financially within football within England, and he's not wrong. And I've read an article where in a newspaper where he was interviewed, and it's quite damning, his assessment of the state of the English game as it currently stands. And we can debate the state of football and is the money bubble gonna come crashing down and burst. And I actually think we're not too far away from a severe crisis financially within football within the next 5 years. I honestly believe we could have a very big crossroads when it comes to financially where football stands going forward. I think there is a concern that there's so many clubs in debt, so many clubs having financial problems, and Bolton Wanderers might be the first club facing administration for a long time. I mean, Aston Villa got close last year as well, but if they were to enter administration, that's the first club in six years to do so. And look at how all the other clubs have fared because of administration, and it isn't so good. There are a whole host of issues to look at in sport. Team Sky is obviously now becoming Team Ineos, as I mentioned. That's quite interesting because their budget's actually increased, and there are a lot of other teams on the Grand Tour circuit not so happy with that. Hello, Mr. Hornet. How I'm doing reasonably well. the body's a bit sore, but I'm doing reasonably well. I mean, I've had a bit of a winter of illness, I suppose. I haven't been at me best, but we're still doing this, so something's paid off. The channel's hit 500 subscribers in the last couple of days, so that's a nice thing to wake up to the other day, was to have the 500 subscribers. That was a pleasant surprise to have. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what questions you guys have in the comments section. I'm going to be looking forward to your questions today. There are a whole host of sporting topics we could discuss. Yeah, thank you very much for the congratulations. I wasn't expecting it to come as soon as it did. I've been tracking my progress on Social Blade, which is got an error range of 6 to 8% either way, which is not a bad error rate to have off an algorithm. It's not too bad. And I'm ahead of the curve every month. I'm beating what Social Blade are predicting. So hopefully the channel just picks up pace, and going into the summer and the end of the football season, end of the rugby union season, hopefully the channel picks up some pace. Hopefully some big transfers happen that I can discuss, and some managerial movings I can discuss. Obviously, we've got promotion, relegation to discuss, all those kind of things. It'll be interesting to see the growth of the channel, in a couple of months. But I actually found the video where I hit 100 subscribers, and that was on January the 19th of last year. So the channel was 5 times bigger than what it was a little over a year ago, and the channel has been creating content for 2 years this time next month. So we've done quite well for a smaller niche channel. I'm quite happy with where we're at. It'd be nice to be monetized. It'd be nice to have 1,000 subscribers plus. It'd be nice to have the view hours. Obviously, it's not meant to be at this point, but we're getting there. And there's sport is a never-ending story. It's there's never-ending news cycle when it comes to sport. There's never a day off, if you know what I mean. There's always something going on. Although it has been a reasonably slow sports news week, I would admit it has been quite slow this week on the sports news front. It hasn't been the most interesting of sports news weeks so far. Bit slower than normal, but there are one or two important stories going on at the moment. My thoughts on the Cricket World Cup. I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to actually be very, very interesting, because there's another major sporting event that takes place in London at the same time, which is the Major League Baseball has arranged 2 games between the Red Sox and the Yankees at the London City Stadium, where West Ham play at the old Olympic Stadium. It's going to be interesting because obviously the TV rights on cricket is a big debate. The weather, look at the weather we had last summer. I'm looking out the window right now, and it's pretty decent mid-March weather, but you got to look how we had the last summer, how hot it got, how humid it got. It was a roasting hot summer. So if we have a similar summer this year, that could be interesting to see how the players adapt to that. It's going to be interesting with all the debate about cricket with the TV rights, and should it all be on Sky, and there's some drip feeding coming back with free-to-air TV coverage over the next couple of years, which is great to see, but it's nowhere near enough. Ticket pricing is going to be interesting to see if what the crowds are like. That's going to be interesting to look at the crowd figures and how many tickets are sold. It's going to also be interesting, obviously, with the 100-ball format that no one really wants, apart from the ECB and those who are on ECB centralised contracts have all come out and said, yeah, we want this 100-ball format, when actually most people don't want it because it's crap. The ECB has been badly mismanaged for quite some time. I think cricket as a whole has been mismanaged for quite some time. We've seen that the IPL will not be on Sky Sports, as was agreed. A different channel will be hosting it free to air in this country, a very minor channel that you've got to really search for on a Skybox. So that's interesting. But at the moment, we're too far out to really discuss the Cricket World Cup. There's obviously things like the IPL and any test series like the Ashes as well, also to discuss. So we're too far out at this point to really have a debate on the World Cup necessarily. But I would like to see have a positive. I would like to see some good crowds, some good cricket, more young people taking up the game because of it. I think there can be a positive, but it needs to be accessible, and that's where the TV rights is a big sticking point because of the ECB's insistence on Sky. Do I think the Premier League, a Premier League club can win the Champions League this year? Well, 4 out of the 8 teams in the quarterfinals are Premier League clubs, so that says all you need to know really about. We have a 1 in 2 chance of a Premier League club winning at this stage, but until the quarterfinals are out the way, we're not going to know really, because all 4 English sides could get knocked out in the next round. 2 of those English sides are challenging for the Premier League title. I think Tottenham are fallen back too far, and I think Tottenham may struggle in the quarterfinals onwards. I think Tottenham could go with another trophyless season, which I don't think the fans will tolerate somehow. I think the stadium rebuild is well behind schedule. Okay, they're meant to be opening on the 3rd of April, I believe, and they're meant to be playing a game against Crystal Palace. So we'll wait to see if they actually do get that game to go ahead at the new White Hart Lane. There is a good chance that it could be an all Premier League final. It could be an all semi-final lineup. There is that chance. There's a 50% chance of it happening as it currently stands, but at the same time, we don't know what's going to happen. Anything can happen in a cup competition. Doesn't matter if it's a straight knockout game or over 2 legs. So that is completely and utterly. Again, that's up in the air. We'll have to see what happens in the quarterfinals. But yeah, there's a very, very good chance that a Premier League side could win the Champions League. I think Man City have come not close enough. I think Man City have underwhelmed in the Champions League with all the money they've got. 1 semi-final appearance since they were bought in 2007 by Sheikh Mansour. A couple of quarterfinal appearances in there. That's not good enough. If the amount of money they spent, they might have had this amazing domestic season last year, but Guardiola might have signed this lovely contract extension, but it's dependent on their Champions League success. If they can't win the Champions League, he will go. It is what it is on that one. But no, the likelihood is a 50% chance. It's a 50-50 chance that an English club, as it currently stands with the teams that have got through to the quarterfinals, can win. The 1 ball format is coming. Yeah, the cricket 100 format that no one wants. It's a laughing stock. The ECB have come up with another harebrained, crack-brained scheme to try and increase popularity. There's a way to increase popularity in cricket, put it back on free-to-air. It's a simple solution, but the ECB have been lining their pockets as teams are struggling. The Welsh Rugby Union and the PRB and what's come out in the last few weeks, it has been frustrating as a sports fan to see how badly they have handled this situation. It seems they've learnt nothing from 15 years ago with the Celtic Warriors collapse. It seems that the players don't have much involvement in the process, and they've been very, very critical about the lack of involvement in the process throughout. It's pretty damning when Anscombe came out and said, look, we could leave Welsh Rugby for other leagues, which will give us job security. And he's not wrong. And the day he says that, the PRB come out and say, oh, yeah, no, all clubs are going to be playing as they are next season. All regions are playing next season as they are this season. The fact that the PRB have been so cack-handed about the dealing of it, and the Welsh Union haven't dealt with this well. There were concerns in recent seasons that have reached a point this season with the financial state of the game, and the Welsh clubs haven't been that successful. I'm not trying to belittle the Welsh side here, but only 1 Welsh team winning the Pro League in the last 6 years. That's not good, and that was the Scarlets. They've really been not up to scratch compared to the Irish teams in the Pro League. They've been dominated, and the Irish have. Well, you can just see what the Irish provinces have done over the last 14 years. They've dominated the Pro League, and they've done pretty well in Europe as well. I do think it has overshadowed the Six Nations win. It has also left there a legacy of uncertainty going forward for next year as well. This time next year, we'll be having the same debate we've had this year. It doesn't solve the problem. It just pushes it down the road. And that will leave the players post-World Cup with yet more uncertainty. Now, they will have clubs to go back and play with, but there's an issue about can the clubs afford to pay the players? Players out of contract. The Welsh game could see loads of star players who've got more than 60 caps and less than 60 caps leave the Welsh game, and that then makes a mockery of the Welsh selection policy. If you've got to have 60 caps before you can play abroad, that's been part of the problem. The centralised contracts is part of the problem because it's not sustainable as it currently is. There's been a number of solutions put forward, and if they do want a team in North Wales, there is a solution. The Welsh Union owns the Dragons, so if they really wanted a team in North Wales, they can just move the Dragons. The fact they want to merge two teams together is insanity. It doesn't work. Other sports and other leagues have tried it. It doesn't end very well. I think the best success that's been had is in the NRL and the Rugby League with the joint venture clubs. But there's only 2 out of those 3 joint venture clubs still in existence. The Manly Sea Eagles merged with another club, I think the Newtown Jets, I believe. And the Newtown Jets are no longer part of the merger, I believe. I think they went out of business. So that left them financially struggling for a while. So the only league where I can say it's been reasonably successful when you merge 2 clubs together is the NRL. And I've done a fair few videos on the NRL. And I say reasonably successful because there's only 2 out of the 3 joint venture clubs left going as is. So it's not always worked. And I don't understand the insistence that the 2 most successful teams should merge. That makes no sense to me, but it is what it is. And it was very distracting for the players. Whether that motivated the players to play even better, to give the Welsh Union a message saying, look, this is what you're risking here. You never know. But when players are coming out publicly before and after games and saying that this is the worst timing for this announcement of proposed changes, can this wait? We're trying to prepare for some serious test matches here. We're trying to prepare to win a tournament for the first time in a while. Can you shut up? It kind of, and when the players are coming out saying they don't feel involved in the process, that doesn't make, it looks pretty bad. It looks pretty amateur, and it has done some damage to the reputation of Welsh rugby. But the club game in Wales has been in crisis since professionalism in '95. And rugby league in Wales is in crisis as well. So both kinds of rugby are at domestic level really struggling in Wales. The national side in the union, notwithstanding, it has been a struggle for rugby across the board in Wales, both codes. So it's going to be interesting to see what the long-term solution is. But all that has happened is the PRB and the Welsh Rugby Union have pushed the issue down the road 12 months. And in a year's time, we'll be having the same discussion we're having now about the future of the game, because all they've done is delay the issue. They've just kicked it down the road, and that hasn't actually solved the financial problems that are there with paying players and player contracts and club viability. It hasn't actually solved anything. The problems are still there. They're still ongoing. They're not going away. It's like, ignoring the problem so it will go away. It won't. Now, the French, we could discuss the French league and how that's been bad for the French national side. And while the Welsh players will be eyeing up the top 14 in the English Premiership, and maybe some of the younger and older players might be eyeing up Major League Rugby because there's 3 new teams coming into existence and there's an overseas player rule. The Welsh national side needs to look at its selection policy as well and go, right, do we really think that this selection policy that we currently have in place is sustainable? Because if they stick with the 60 cap rule, then a lot of these players will not be eligible for selection under the current selection rules if they were to move on into club rugby outside of Wales. It makes a mockery then of the selection. So that's what it is. Well, Italy played better than France in that game. They just outplayed themselves. They overplayed. They defeated themselves. They did what Scotland did against Wales, and they overplayed. I think the signs are positive, but they are in a very tough group in the World Cup with South Africa and New Zealand in there. But at the same time, the calls for promotion relegation, it's all well and good saying you want to have this system. But if France were the team to finish bottom, which they have done in the past, or Scotland, they're well too strong for Georgia. The Italians have never been beaten by the Georgians. Until the Georgians can A, raise the level of their domestic league, which is a long way off, and B, have a backline that's capable of taking on a tier 1 nation backline that they're not. It's not going to work because it will be the Georgians come up, have a good scrum, and that's it. That's all they have is a good forward pack. And in set play, in open play, they're not as good, and their fitness levels. Most of the Georgians play in the French league, and I was discussing about the French league not being the fittest. Uh, you know, the French league might be great at winning European championships, but when it actually comes to developing international players, the French fitness levels are just shocking compared to the rest of the Six Nations. I do feel sorry for Italy. I think having lived out there and spent a lot of time there in my younger years as a teenager and having an affinity with the country, I suppose, and it is a shame that they are where they are, but you can blame a lot of that on Jacques Brunel, the current French coach. He left Italy with a lot of structural problems. Conor O'Shea is fixing those problems, and it is a long process. It's a 5-year plan they have, and they're 2 years in. So I think Conor O'Shea is better off as a director of rugby and someone else coming into coach. So when Sergio Parisse retires, I think he'll go into a coaching role. I think the same would be said of Giraldini and Alessandro Zani when they all decide to retire after the World Cup. And yet the Italians did play well again. They really pushed Ireland the whole way. They pushed the French. They completely outplayed the French. They were leading against Ireland. And it came down to some missed kicks. The missed kicks against Ireland killed them. They would have won that game if they got their kicks. And the French game, they overplayed themselves. They defeated themselves. They outplayed the French for 80 minutes. And it is a shame that there was a try disallowed by the team that I think should have been given. But it is what it is. On fine margins is Test rugby won and lost. But the debate won't go away. But I find it interesting when that France and Scotland are at the bottom of the Six Nations, and they have been, and so have Ireland and Wales over the years, that the call for promotion relegation disappears. So I find the elitism of some of the nations on their high horse really frustrating, because Italy faced all these hurdles to get into the tournament, and now they want to put them out. The issue with putting Japan and Georgia alongside Tonga and Fiji is the travel. And there's already a concern. Yeah, okay, Japan have got the World Cup, and that's great. But this World Rugby format they want to have, the revamp of international rugby, is not going to benefit these countries. Japan, yes. Georgia, Tonga, and Fiji, no. As it currently stands, the plan that they've put in place, it doesn't benefit them. And Japan are now losing the Sunwolves from the Super Rugby format, which shows how badly Super Rugby has been managed down in the Southern Hemisphere. The Sunwolves are starting to get decent, and the Super Rugby is being badly mismanaged. They expanded to 18 teams. They couldn't cope with that. They've tried to shrink it back down. They can't cope with that. There's been legal challenges from the Western Force about them being kicked out. I wouldn't be surprised if down the line the Sunwolves decide to put in a legal challenge as well. The point was to improve the quality of rugby and grow the game, and they've completely. On the eve of the World Cup, pretty much saying, "Oh yeah, the Sunwolves, we're not going to have them next year." The Sunwolves might go on and win every other game this season, hypothetically, and get to finals, and that would be a right shambles if they did that. They may not be as competitive as the Jaguares, and they may not have all the best Japanese players in it, but they've got some good players in that squad. And from the few games I've seen of the Sunwolves this season, they've been really good and expansive, and they're not afraid to play. And I think the way Super Rugby has been managed is chronic. But you got to look at the crowds in Super Rugby. There's half-filled stadiums, especially across the board. The stadiums are half-filled, and that. I think Super Rugby has been chronically mismanaged. It's heavily weighted in the favour of the 5 New Zealand sides. Heavily weighted in favour with the way it's done. There's a weird perversion within World Rugby to favour the All Blacks as a general looking at things. And there's a conspiracy theory that the All Blacks are favoured with refereeing as well, and all sorts. And look, Super Rugby is in a mess. I'm not going to lie. Super Rugby is in a mess, and it's been in a mess since they decided to expand. Personally, I think what they needed to do was, the Japan has already got a professional league below Super Rugby, and it's actually of a higher standard than the Sunwolves, ironically. So I don't think it's necessarily a backward step for Japan, but the Sunwolves was giving them a global outlook on top of their professional league. The Jaguares, I think you need more than one team in Argentina. For me, that would be the way to go, personally. But they've stuck with just the one team in Argentina. I think that's possibly a mistake, putting all the Argentinian players in one basket. I mean, if they have a bad season, that will transfer to the national side, I think. But Argentina faced all these hurdles, much like the Italians did of getting into the Six Nations. The Argentinians faced all sorts of hurdles getting into Super Rugby, um, and getting into the Rugby Championship, which was the old Tri Nations, because there's an elitism in the Tier 1 nations. There's a massive elitism, and they want to keep that elitism and live off past glories. The Australians are not the side they were 15, 20 years ago. The South Africans have gone through some ups and downs in the last decade or so since they won the World Cup 2007. And I think if you want to grow the game, Super Rugby's turned into a mess, absolute mess. Hey, just started following you for your rugby league. Yeah, look, I'm a rugby league fan. Rugby league could be doing better across the world. It's not just in here in the UK. It's the NRL as well, in Australia and New Zealand. There's been a lot of scandal this off-season in the NRL. A lot of scandal, and I think that's damaged the brand of rugby league as a whole. The brand has been very, very damaged with the off-season scandals in the NRL. But there's been some scandals in Super League as well. There's been some players in Super League who've done some silly things. There's less players in Super League, but you've got to look at it like this. The Super League is not the major sport. Rugby league is not the biggest sport that we have in the UK. There are sports that have, bigger media presence and are better supported, obviously football and the Premier League. But there seems to be an issue across the league, across the world with rugby league, with player discipline off the field and player antics and what is acceptable for a high level sportsman to get away with. And it's an ongoing debating point. I think I've changed the World Cup. I mean, the World Cup challenge has been going for a long time. And if I'm honest, I would have it post-season after the Super League and NRL seasons, personally, rather than beginning of the Super League season and pre-season for the NRL. I would have it as the season's ended, the two best sides in Super League, and I'll do it then. But they've tried fiddling with the format several times. The dominance of Australian sides in recent times is plain to see. I honestly think the NRL is a superior league, because if the NRL sides in the last couple of years can win it in pre-season when the Super League's been playing for about a month at that point, it says there's a big gap, massive gap. Some say scrap it, some say keep it. I think next time it's on the UK shores, it has to be free to air. I think you have to put that free to air, because in Australia that is on free to air on the Nine network. So the Australian media rights, they balanced it with pay-per-view, subscription, and free to air. Here they haven't, and I think this is what's holding rugby league back in this country massively. And I think that there needs to be the rugby league TV rights need to be looked at. It's Rupert Murdoch's handprint all over it, but now he's no longer in charge of Sky. And he's no longer in charge of the NRL. So it's going to be interesting to see at the next round of TV rights who gets what. NRL side, there's a lot coming in about let's have a look. A lot coming in about the World Cup challenge and the NRL. I think the NRL is the better league. And I'll get on to Scotland's performance at Twickenham, because I've done a video on that, and I debated how shocking the first half was for Scotland and how shocking the second half was for England. And it was the craziest match of rugby union I think I've ever seen at international level ever. And I've seen some amazing matches like France's comeback in the '99 World Cup, but this particular match I think is the craziest that I've seen in the modern era. But no, I talking about the NRL size and how they adapt better to English grounds. I think it's an interesting one, because obviously it's still our winter when the World Club Challenge is played. But no, the Australian sides have a better record. Absolutely, you just got to look at the club histories that I've been doing on the NRL and look at Brisbane. They won it twice in the '90s easily. So I think yeah, the NRL is the superior competition. I'm not even denying that. I've been saying that now for a while. I think the World Cup validated that, and I think, admittedly, England beat the Kiwis in that Test series, but that third Test, that was a capitulation by England. They could have whitewashed the Kiwis, and that would have done some of the Super League players a world of good, giving them a lot of confidence, and they just didn't turn up for the third Test. It's going to be interesting to see how the Great Britain tour down under, how that goes at the end of the year with tests against Papua New Guinea and Tonga and New Zealand, because that's 3 different Test sides, and they will be all really tough to play against. The Scotland England game, a lot's been said about that. It's highlighted a lot of problems with Scotland, and that's their depth and their defensive organisation. Absolutely. Scotland's depth, they were scraping the barrel in the back line. The forward pack wasn't so bad, but the back line, they were on a shoestring there. They were playing some players that I don't think are fully Test ready. Now, Darcy Graham had a great game, but I don't think he's Test ready for a long stint in the side. I think he needs a bit more experience at just club level than being a starter. But he played very, very well, and his second try was brilliant. How he managed to beat 4 players to score. But the issues with England have been highlighted as well. That it wasn't a fitness thing. Even in the first half, when they were dominating play in the first half, their tackle technique was shocking, absolutely not acceptable. There's a lot of issues with England. Some of them were long-standing, pre-Eddie Jones. I think a lot of them predate Stuart Lancaster as well, who was the last coach. So we're going back a long time. And my insurance company for my bike has just emailed me saying that I have, about driving in Europe post-Brexit. I'm on a learner plate, so I can't. Stupid insurance company. I didn't think they panicked. There seems to be an issue with England as a whole. I think there's some selection issues in there. There's some discipline issues in there. There's some technique. There's definitely some mental issues as well. And at the end of the day, it was a very interesting Six Nations tournament that did divide a lot of opinion. And at the end of the day, looking at how England fell apart in the second half against Scotland, it's an interesting one because Scotland hadn't shown much in the tournament up to that point, and then suddenly they're pulling off all these great moves. I don't think Scotland were great. I think England were that bad. I think it made Scotland look better than they actually were. But Gregor Townsend will not be happy with the defence of that Scotland side, because then they take the lead. They've got into the lead, and then they balls it up in the last 5 or so minutes. They give away a silly penalty dead on full time. And of course, with the new ruling now, you can kick the ball to touch from a penalty, get the line out, and have your set play, and then they scored from it. So Gregor Townsend will be frustrated that they had the comeback, and that's a great show character, and he'll be very happy with that. But then to cough up the lead themselves, he'll be pissed off. And defence has been Scotland's weakness for a long, long time. They concede too many tries, and I think neither of these sides are going to do well in the World Cup. I honestly believe England and Scotland will not do well in the World Cup. I think they've got so many problems. But that's my opinion on that. I have read that the Man City fan did have some severe injuries and was very, very lucky to survive. I hate it when the media refers to all this crowd trouble as their fans. They're not. The media needs to be truthful here. These people who commit these offences of football aren't fans, and they never will be. And a fan group has come out this week and said, all fans are demonised as hooligans. Well, the Newcastle-Bournemouth game, for example, there were a load of arrests at the end of the game and an assault on a steward. And the fans groups are saying, "Oh, these are not hooligans." Well, then why was a female steward punched in the face and left with a broken eye socket and nose? I'm not gonna lie there. That was pretty gutless. It does clearly say that if you trespass on a football pitch, you will get arrested. So, I think the issues with domestic football in the UK, and I'm using Scotland this as well. You know, there are issues there. There's a reason why there's a rise in crowd trouble. There's less policing grounds. There's the issue about who pays for the policing on match days is a massive thing at the moment. Massive thing. Oh, I'm just getting my microphone right. And it doesn't paint a good image for the game. And it puts off families from going. And of course, the young kids are your future fans and your future players. And if they're not feeling involved in the sport, they're not going to watch the sport, or they're put off the sport, then it harms the sport at the end of the day. That's the best way to describe it. I think you want to keep young people involved. You want to keep the community involved and sell tickets. And it doesn't work if you keep having moronic idiots ruining. We've seen up in Scotland multiple problems this season, and of course the other weekend we had multiple pitch invasions and players being attacked. And there was one guy on one of my videos who actually was one of these idiots was said, I've got no problem as long as they don't fuck up the turf. And I was like, hang on a second, what was if he had a knife? Then he started to say I didn't live in the real world. It's like, hang on a second, I've been stabbed. I've been in hospital. I've had my head kicked in. I have seen the real world. I've been in an induced coma. It's not a pleasant experience when you've got a hole in your head and you've got a brain injury and a fractured skull. I can tell you that. The Bournemouth Newcastle, the equaliser, a load of fans got on the field and Stewart got attacked in the process. And at the end of the day, it's not going away. And fan groups are saying that we're being all demonised as hooligans. Well, you're not doing enough as fan groups for outing these arseholes from the game and getting them out of it. End of the day, and they're not doing enough to if these so-called fans are members of their groups, banning them I think we have to look at the issue of policing. We have to look at the issue of stewarding. And we have to look at the issue of stadium security because it's not good, especially as Euro 2020 is next season. And of course, Wembley's hosting the final. And so a lot of games have been played in Euro 2020 in England and Wales next year because of Platini's mental meltdown of saying, oh, yeah, let's have all of Europe play, the tournament. And of course, Scotland has an alcohol ban, but England doesn't. England still sells alcohol at football matches. There is no alcohol ban south of the border. So it says a lot about the state of the game. The police are blaming the rise in use of cocaine. Yeah, because they always need to blame the drug use. That's an easy way of copping out for not agreeing to police inside grounds. It's an easy way. It's an easy cop out. Blame the drugs and alcohol. The issue about policing in grounds is there, and I think the fact the SFA were thinking about getting rid of the ban on alcohol in football grounds in Scotland was insanity, absolute insanity. It's a no-brainer, really. And the fans do need to do more, absolutely. And fan groups whinging that they're being demonised as all hooligans. Well, here's the thing: you're not doing enough as fan groups to basically distance yourself from the hooligan elements that are attracted to football. They never have. They never will do. They don't have the guts. They don't. If they care so much about their clubs being in front and protesting about how badly run their clubs are. But even when the clubs are well run, they're not singling out the hooligan element and going, "We don't want you guys here. You guys are not welcome." And they're not. They're not. Because sectarianism in Scotland is at its worst, I think I've seen in my lifetime. And football violence is at its worst in about 20 years. And it shames the game, and it's always the same clubs as well. It's always the same clubs that regularly pop up week in, week out with fans misbehaving. And I use that in that way because they're not fans, they're idiots, they're arseholes. Is there a link with alcohol and drugs? Absolutely. Is there a link with gang culture? Absolutely. But mainstream fans aren't doing enough. Clearly, the expensive ticket prices aren't keeping these arseholes away. That was the idea behind all-seater stadiums and and the TV deal with Sky was to keep these idiots away, and it clearly hasn't worked. There's less policing at grounds. That's a problem, and yeah, we've pandered to the minority in so many things on the agenda. I'm not going to go into the politics side of it, but we've pandered to the minorities that to the point where it has become such a PC culture we have now. But no, there is an issue. Absolutely, homophobia, big problem there. Racism, sexism, sectarianism, you name it. The amount of missiles, we're not as bad as mainland Europe. I'm going to say that. So you think we're bad in the UK? We're nowhere near as bad as in mainland Europe. Not even close. We are doing much better than we were 20, 30 years ago. Absolutely, but I think the issues are persisting, and they're not going away. And you just got to look at what happened in the 2016 Euros. The issues are still there. They haven't been defeated or eradicated. I don't think you ever fully will, but it's the worst we've seen it for a very, very long time, and it is worrying when ticket prices are so high, clubs are financially struggling, mismanagement of the game up and down the country. Football's in a dark place, and I don't think many people realise it. England's women, yet they do seem to be doing quite well. I will agree with that. And yeah, Aberdeen knocking Rangers out the cup. But look, it's still been a great competitive season that we've seen this year in Scotland. I mean, yeah, Celtic are going to win again. It's boring, but at least it was interesting for 90% of the season. It is a shame that the season's sort of winding down and has gone away from Rangers, Aberdeen, and Kilmarnock a little bit. It would have been nice to see Hearts stay at the top a little bit longer, but they completely had a meltdown, didn't they? Which I think wasn't great. It would have been nice to see them stay near the top as well. But the fact that I think it's 4 or 5 different teams have led the league this season, that's a positive. So going forward, we don't know if obviously Neil Lennon's going to stay at Celtic for the next season. So it's going to be interesting to see who Celtic get in. Obviously, Rodgers moving on to Leicester didn't sit well with a lot of fans. But I think Kilmarnock are in a healthy position going forward for next year. Aberdeen are still, I think, got a good chance of some silverware this season. It's not going to be as easy for Celtic going forward over the next couple of years. I think it's going to be more and more difficult for Celtic to keep winning. I honestly think that Celtic's dominance is nearing its end, and I think that can only be good for Scottish football long term. I honestly believe that, because if they were to keep dominating, I think the worse it is for Scottish football going forward. And on another note, Scotland have to qualify for a major tournament soon, because that helps with the UEFA coefficient. If the national side get a bit more successful, that helps. But we'll have to wait and see what happens next season, and we'll have to see what Kilmarnock, Rangers, and Aberdeen do next season. If Hearts can have another good start to the season, if they can maintain it. But it's been better this season in north of the border until the last, I would say, month and a half. It's been a very competitive league this season. It's a shame that it started to become Celtic's league again. But at the same time, I think Celtic fans have to accept that their period of success is nearing its end. I don't think Celtic can keep winning all the time going forward. Rangers, they have to give Gerrard time, but this is Rangers. They are one of the most mismanaged clubs I think you'll find anywhere in the world. I don't know what happened. I don't know what's going to happen with Rangers, because there's still issues about their finances. There's still issues going on, with their budget. It's interesting. Kazakhstan, yeah, you're in Kazakhstan. Of course, the time difference, they're like 4 hours ahead. It's going to be interesting. It would have been nice if the UEFA Nations League had been on free-to-air TV, because I don't feel invested in that tournament. The Euro qualifiers, at least they're accessible for general public. Scotland do need to qualify for a major tournament. It's been 21 years now. They've got to qualify for the Euros. They have to. Their lack of appearances at tournaments is another reason why the league is struggling. And there has to be they have to qualify soon for a tournament. Otherwise, whatever happens in the Scottish League is irrelevant. It's going to be interesting to see how they perform in Kazakhstan with the time differential. That could be a tricky game, actually. They're away from home. San Marino, if they fluff up against San Marino, none of those players deserve to play for Scotland ever again. That's my personal opinion on that one. But these are two games that you think Scotland could win. I think I do think Kazakhstan, they can win that game, but it's going to be tough. The Nations League side of things, it just adds an extra complication to the international format. I know friendlies were getting a little bit, people weren't liking the friendlies and how uncompetitive they were and how boring they were. I get that. But we'll have to wait and see how this UEFA Nations league goes forward in the future years. But it appears that Rugby Union is trying to copy this, and this is where I worry about World Rugby. I think Rugby Union is trying to copy what football was done in Europe with the Nations League. I think that's where their ideas come from. They've looked at how reasonably successful the first time round this has been, but we've got to see long term how successful this is as a international kind of fixture kind of listing. But I think World Rugby basically copied the Nations League, and that can't be a good idea, surely, copying another sport. What works for one sport doesn't necessarily work for another. And rugby being the sport that it is, the contact sport, you've got to limit the amount of play that players can play, the amount of games. It's not. I don't think it suits it, but that's my personal opinion. It will be interesting to see, if the UEFA Nations League is carried on long term, and what impacts it actually has on football in Europe, positive or negative. I think that's a wait to see kind of thing. Not every fan has bought into it personally. It's still a divisive topic. And the fact Harry Kane's come out and said winning, the Nations League would be better than trying to win the World Cup. Get to the quarterfinals, semi-finals of the World Cup. I don't know. I think some of these players have got too much money in their pockets and not enough brains, personally, myself. But that's my personal opinion on that one. Okay, the Six Nations. I think this year, and I'm going to say this on an actual technical level and performance level, take the energy levels out of it and the entertainment and the open games. The performance level, the technicalities, the basics were very poor. Every team was below what is expected of a tier one nation. For me, I think if you were to do that against the Southern Hemisphere nations in the World Cup, Wales won't win. All these Welsh fans go, we're going to win the World Cup. They're not. No one knows who's going to win the World Cup. I pegged Ireland as my favourites in November after they beat the All Blacks, and look how that turned out. They had a poor Six Nations. I think all Six Nations in the Six Nations underperformed. On a technical level, the handling skills were poor. The penalty counts were too high. Defensively, I think the Welsh come out the best defensively, but shambles. Too many mistakes, too many basic errors that I don't think the All Blacks and the South Africans will make. Honestly, that's my personal opinion. I think all teams in the Six Nations underperformed on a technical standpoint. On an entertainment standpoint, it was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. It was very entertaining. Some very open games, some high scoring games, which was great. But on a technical standpoint, if you look technically at the technical skills, the skill set that was displayed was really poor, and people can't differentiate the difference between a poor skill set and an entertaining game. And I got a lot of criticism for that. I was like, no, the actual technicalities of the game, it might be entertaining, but it was really, really crap. I got criticised for my views on how the teams played. I felt Wales in attack were very one-dimensional. They got no bonus points. So since the bonus points has been introduced into the Six Nations, I think it's about 3-4 years now, Wales are the only team to win the Six Nations without a bonus point. And they didn't play great. They just had a solid defence. And I even, the Welsh have come out and said, we're not playing well, but we're winning. So it is what it is there. I don't know. I think I think the All Blacks are vulnerable. I do. The Irish proved that. The English pushed them all the way with pretty much the side that flopped in the Six Nations this year. So I don't know. I think the All Blacks are very, very vulnerable right now. I think they're past their prime. I think they've peaked. I think they've had a long period of success and it's coming to an end. And I don't think the All Blacks are prepared for it to come to an end. But I think this World Cup is now more open than what it was this time last year when we were looking at how the Irish were playing and how bad England were, and then the South Africans exposed the All Blacks in the Rugby Championship. Then the Irish beat them. I think the World Cup now is a far more open tournament than what it was 12 months ago, predicting and looking forward to it. I think there's a lot that can happen. I think the Japanese will be dark horses to get out of their group. I think France may struggle to get out of their group with England and Argentina. Italy are not going to get out of their group with South Africa and New Zealand. There are going to be some tier one nations that don't make it out the group stage. And that's going to open up the tournament. There's some tier two nations that could surprise and do quite well. And Georgia and Wales' group. Now, Georgia want to get promotion to the Six Nations. They've been banging on the door for this for years. If they can beat that Welsh side or get a bonus point loss or something, then yes, you know, that helps with their argument of getting into the promotion relegation. But if they get hammered in the World Cup, then their argument for being promoted to the Six Nations is dead in the water for me. The Australians aren't the team they were. I've said that many times. They're not the team that they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. There is an issue in Australia, and it's to do with the NRL. Let me just sort out my headset. There we go. Oh, bloody headset is pissing me off. The issue with Australia is this. At youth level, at school level, there are a lot of players playing rugby union. It's when they hit 17, 18 that the NRL clubs and the AFL clubs approach them and go, you know, we can pay you more to play Aussie rules or rugby league than union can. And you can get first grade appearances very quickly. And the kids swap codes. And this is the issue that the Australians have had for quite some time, is they're bleeding players at under 19s level, especially to rugby league. They are bleeding players. The amount of rugby league players currently playing and ex-players who started out playing union is massive. And there are some superstar players in the NRL that actually were first 15 at school rugby union players. So there is an issue there with the lack of retention of youth players, and it is hampering Australia going forward. And the way Super Rugby has been, you know, dealt with things, with Western Force being booted out of Super Rugby, and that's leading to a problem as well. A lot of Australians are coming over to Europe to play, and then they're not eligible for selection for the national side under their rule, because the Matt Gitter rule is exceptional circumstances with an exceptional player. So Australia I don't think are not. I don't think they're going to do it. I really don't. Argentina could surprise, yes. Argentina, though, they've got France and England in their group, and that is the group of death, but also the most open group as well. A tier one nation will go out of the World Cup at the group stage. It's going to be interesting, but the World Cup is so hard to predict right now because we've got 6 months until the World Cup. A lot can happen, especially in Super Rugby. And the European rugby season is still ongoing. We've got the Major League Rugby in North America, so the US and Canadian team and Uruguayan teams, they select players from that competition. It's going to be interesting. Why put those rules in place for Hertz national team? The Welsh have it with their selection policy, which has led to the crisis in Welsh domestic rugby, because there's not enough money in the game to pay all these centralised contracts. The French have, I think, now gone with this home selection rule. The English have gone with this rule. The Kiwi. I think every tier one nation, apart from the Italians and the Scots, have gone with this domestically based rule, and the Argentinians, they've all gone with this exceptional circumstances, but you've got to have a certain number of caps before you can play abroad if you want to be selected. South Africans are more flexible with their selection than the other major tier one nations who have this selection rule. But no, it does. I get why the rule is in place, because rugby is such a contact, brutal sport, and you want to have the player welfare and keep a close eye on your players. Absolutely. But I think in a global game, it defeats the object if the game is going global, and more professional in more countries. I think it does defeat the object, because Super Rugby is in crisis. There's no kidding behind that. Super Rugby's, the fans are roundly saying it's been badly run. They're coming out very publicly and saying Super Rugby is in a mess. I understand why the rule is there for a lot of nations, but you wouldn't see that in football. You don't see it in rugby league. You don't. The Australians, all the best Australian players right now are playing in the NRL, but that wasn't always the case. There were some Australian players that were playing in the Super League who were selected. Rugby league doesn't have this rule. Football, or soccer if you're from North America, does not have this rule. It's insanity. Other major international sports that are team sports do not have this rule. Rugby union does. It's a mad one, because there are ultimately some of the world's best players are not eligible to play for their countries, and of course that, I think, devalues the World Cup slightly. And we're seeing more and more South Africans and Australians especially coming over to Europe to play. The European leagues can pay them more. They can get paid more money. It's the same with the NRL to a point, although the NRL salary cap has gone up massively. Until 2012, the money in the Super League was attracting so many star players in rugby league to play over here that it had to change. And this is why the NRL is now the better competition. It was pretty even, and now it's the better competition because the best players are playing in Australia, and now the best European players are going to Australia to play. But no, I mean, you have to look at it. You have to look at it as it is. The selection rules in place, I think, while I understand why they're there, I think the game has become more global and the rules are outdated, and they do more to hinder than help. But I understand why they're there. But I think if the game is to, and the sport is to continue to grow, and hopefully this Japanese World Cup really helps with that. It's a big market in Japan. I don't know why they got rid of the Sunwolves, because they're big. It's a massive media market. It's insanity to get rid of it. I don't know how much longer those protectionist policies can stay in place for selection. I don't know how much longer they can. It wasn't always so that the English and the French had these policies. It's only in recent times that that's become the rule in France and England. Wales, I think that's part of the problem with the Welsh game, is you have to have 60 cap policy because they can't afford all the centralised contracts, which led to all the financial problems in the Welsh game. But I don't know. I honestly don't know where rugby goes. I think they have to sit down and look at the selection policies for countries, and is it the right policy? There's pros and cons for both sides. So you bought EA Sports 2019 NHL. I haven't bought an NHL game for a couple of years. I'm not a fan of them anymore, but I'm not a fan of sports games anymore, really, if I'm honest. NHL 2019 had a lot of criticism from a lot of gamers. But it's if you've played the NHL franchise of games before, it'll be interesting to see what you make of it. But it has been criticised for some of the gameplay. I didn't enjoy 2016 or 2017. I didn't buy last year's NHL game. I haven't bought this year's NHL game. I was very disappointed with 2016 and 2017, and of course, it's the same platform. It's on the same gen of consoles. It hasn't changed that much. A lot of gamers are critical of it. But EA Sports, I'm not a fan of EA Sports anymore. I've stopped buying sports games a long time ago. I had UFC 2 and I had Fight Night, and I had a couple of the later NHL titles, and I really wasn't. I I wasn't a big fan of it. Yeah, James Haskell. I'm not a big fan of James Haskell as a player or as a person. I've met him. The guy's an arsehole. Just putting it out there. I don't care if he watches this live stream down the line. The guy's a dick. Big deal. He came back and he wanted to try for England. Is he in the England squad right now? Nope. Says all you need to know, really. The guy's a gym monkey. He's not a skillful player. He's a muscle player. He's just there for his power. He's not there for his skill. And as we've seen, skill and power, you mix that together, you've got a great player. If you've got power or skill by itself, it doesn't work. I've seen his podcast. It's yay. Him and Joe Marler, great. A guy who deliberately got himself suspended so he wouldn't have to play for his country. Yay. Big deal. I'm not a fan of Joe Marler. I'm not a fan of James Haskell. Never have been. Never have been. Wow. Some professional players have got a podcast trying to make themselves some more money. Yay. That's my view on it. I'm just, yeah. I'm not a big fan of some of the podcasts that professional sportsmen who are still, you know, I'm not a big. I've met the guy. The guy's an arsehole. That's my personal opinion. He went to the same school as me. He doesn't have, as an ex member of my school, he's not fondly remembered by people who went to school with him. Let's just say that he's not fondly remembered. So Joe Marler, yeah, okay, he did admit he had some mental health issues, but he could have been more open about that during his international career, and he could have got the help that was needed. He chose not to. He chose to go down the path of being ill-disciplined and harming his side and letting his teammates down more. And mental health is a big talking point, but Joe Marler is an arsehole. The fact he's got mental health issues and he's come out and said he got very depressed and had some mental health issues and was struggling, it's fair enough. But there are ways to deal with it. I think there is. I think it's a difficult one. I think professional sport can be better with mental health, absolutely, and be more open with where athletes can go to get that help. But the way he dealt with it was to deliberately get himself sent off and suspended for doing some things on the pitch that are just not acceptable. I have no sympathy. You know, I've dealt with mental health myself and depression and addiction, and you know what, I know where I can get help. You know, I know it's out there. I'm not afraid to talk about it and be open about it, but there's still this issue with, oh no, mental health, oh no, you're weak, you'll never. But I think Joe Marler is an arsehole. You know, he did let his teammates down by not getting help. He was afraid of letting his teammates down by not being fully switched on. He let his teammates down, both club and country, by getting himself suspended all the time. He actually harmed his team more by not getting help. So he's actually harmed the mental health debate by being an arsehole. That's my personal opinion on it. You know, that's my opinion on it. I mean, it's going to sound harsh, but I've gone through the mental health process. I've gone through the addiction process. I'm not rich and famous yet. I mean, this channel might get me rich and famous. We don't know, but I highly doubt it. But if I was to be, you know, in the position he was in, I would use that position to advocate. Look, yeah, okay, I suffer with depression, but I'm still, you know, able to compete at the highest level. But he could have been a better role model for those struggling with mental health. I actually pay for the NHL games on the actual game itself. I don't have an EA Sports subscription. I don't like the EA servers. They are shocking. Their customer service is shocking. I did it all by buying the game from Game as it was, and a local independent video game shop that sadly has gone out of business. But I didn't get it through the EA access because the EA servers are appalling and regularly have problems. Yes, I did do a video on Conor McGregor getting arrested. He's lucky his community service from his previous incident had just expired. We're talking just expired, but he's in a lot of trouble. This is a guy who's out of control. And admittedly, it's not the most serious incident that could have happened. Conor McGregor's an arsehole. He's another guy who's clearly showing signs of something's not right up here, but he's also showing signs of possible drug addiction, alcohol problems, steroids, whatever it may be, health issues. He's out of control. There are warning signs there that in 10 years' time we'll be discussing a mental breakdown or attempted suicide or brain damage or drug addiction. 10 years' time, there'll something come out Conor McGregor where he's died or he's in prison or he's admitted to a drug addiction or steroid problems, and it will come out. I'm waiting for that day. 5-10 years time, the Conor McGregor story will have its end chapter, and it won't be good. He is more of a reality star than a sports star. I think the money's gone to his head, the success has gone to his head. From the Irish people I've met, they don't like him. He doesn't represent Irish sportsmen. He doesn't represent Irish sport. He doesn't represent Irish society, and he's not very popular in his home country. The way his fans behaved in Vegas were not great. The pre-fight build-up, racism, xenophobia. The guy is out of control. You have to look at that bus incident and how he got away without a prison sentence is beyond me. Because if you or I did that, we're going to prison. Yeah, it is. He's it's got to a point now where it's turning into a circus, and I remember the time he did the bus attack, and I was live streaming because you guys were on the live stream. I remember it, and I just had to go on my phone, get my phone out, and then I was stunned, and then it took over the live stream. Absolutely, I remember that. And to be honest, yeah, he's helped create UFC as the brand it is. He's helped grow the brand, and he's helped grow the promotion, and he's made them a lot of money. But at the same time, I don't know how much longer this can continue because there are debates around the world about banning MMA from several countries. Australia's having this debate again. New Zealand's having this debate. And I remember the live stream. I actually remember it very, very vividly. I was sat over there, and pointing that way to where the edge of my bed, and the window's over there. So I was sat down that way, and we were live, and it was in. I think there was a Champions League quarter final or something on at the time, and it blew up, and the live stream went mad, and loads of random people tuned in, and it went mad very, very quickly. This is the problem in the modern day and age with yeah, no. If you've got a boxing license or a kickboxing license and you commit assault, your license is revoked. You're done because you are sanctioned by a governing body that has to abide by the country and the law of the land that you are licensed by. Yeah, you can have your fighting license revoked. Same with a doorman; they can have their door license revoked because it's basically saying you are licensed to do this activity. It's like a driving license. Absolutely, you can have your fighting license taken away. I'm surprised they haven't said your MMA license is gone. It's getting to the point where, as I say, in a few years' time, possibly. We've seen with some boxers that they've got drugs convictions for marijuana possession, and they're not allowed. They have to go through special visa processes. So Conor McGregor is damaging the brand of UFC, and he's damaging MMA. But every martial artist that I meet, a friend of mine, my friend Mo, he has his own martial arts club gym, and he's basically saying, look, this isn't proper martial arts. Martial arts is about defense and discipline, and there's no defense and discipline here. It's just thuggery with some steroids and some recreational drugs thrown in, and a lot of violence. And it won't be long before it all unravels very badly for UFC and Bellator. And Bellator has a better reputation than UFC, absolutely, but it's not going to be long before it massively unravels, and the damage is being done now. And I think while the ratings for UFC and Bellator are going up, and people are buying into the products because of some of the stuff, people are saying, "Oh, the New York bus attack was a setup." No, it wasn't. It was a guy who was on a drug rage, smashing the living crap out of a bus, and he almost blinded another fighter. If that's a setup, that's a load of BS because Michael Chiesa almost lost an eye. So for me, no. There was a reason why it was very underground to begin with and not very popular. there'll never be a positive public image for mixed martial arts. And I think it won't be long before it comes out with what's going on, and the sport kills itself. We're already seeing issues with more mainstream sport having concussion issues with like rugby, ice hockey, American football, and the NFL especially having so many off-field incidents with players committing some serious offences that make Conor McGregor's bus attack look like nothing. Lots of allegations of domestic violence and drug violations and all these kind of things. The NFL image, the NFL's losing fans. Major League Baseball, the steroid scandal, and things like that, losing fans. So some major sports that are long historical sports, structured sports, they've got a good strong fan base, are losing fans and losing money because of scandal that the public have seen that has been very damaging, massively damaging to the brand. Yeah, it's going to shape the public opinion, and lawmakers will see this and go, okay, this is young people are seeing this and seeing this kind of behaviour as acceptable. We're having an issue with youth crime right now. They put two and two together and they make it harder for the UFC to get a fight license for a country. Absolutely. McGregor released his own set of whiskey. Oh God! Look, you've got to look. Constant blows to the head will leave you with brain damage. You've got to look at so many boxes. Look at Muhammad Ali. You got to look at George Foreman. There's a reason why all of George Foreman's sons are called George. He can't remember names. Joe Frazier, Fighting Joe, Destitute. You got to look at it. Okay. Now I've played rugby. I've got friends who play ice hockey for the local club. And I was having a debate with my mate Ben, who's a Bracknell Hornets player. He used to play for the Bracknell Bees. He's in their reserve team at the moment. And I said, how many concussions have you had playing hockey? And he said, one that I know of. And I was like, how did it feel? And I felt like I was I felt ill. I turned to jelly and I just felt like I was drunk, but not in a good way. You imagine having X amount of concussions over your career. You might have 2 concussions and your brain damaged. You might have 20 concussions and be less susceptible to the brain not healing quickly. All right, you might heal quicker, and that's different. So there might be some genetics involved with CTE as well. Oh yeah, I've had concussions. I've been knocked out. I've had concussions at youth level that wasn't properly looked after. I got knocked out to the point where I thought I was my uncle. Yep, I got knocked out badly in a training session, carried off, assessed. Because I went to boarding school, I got assessed by the medical centre, and they were like, "Yeah, you've had a bit of a blow to the head." Did I go to hospital? Nope. Did they keep me in school? Yep. Was I concussed? Absolutely. I don't remember like 6 hours of my life. And one of my friends said I was talking gibberish for the evening, and he was like, "Are you all right?" And the side of my head was out here. On this side, I had a big. My eye socket was fractured and I was done. I played that weekend. Playing as an amateur level at my local club, I was knocked out twice in the same game. Shouldn't have carried on. And that was what I've had more concussions than that, but I was jelly. The second one, I was jelly. I could barely stand up. I had a few more that season as well that I can probably guess that I was knocked out or concussed, but never got assessed, but I know I was. When I got concussed playing rugby at school, that was 2005. So that was what, 14 years ago? Almost to the day I got poleaxed. I think that was November 2005. I got flattened in a training session. I had 2 serious injuries that season. I almost broke my neck as well. But playing at my local rugby club, I was playing in 2010, 2011. So 9 years ago, I got concussed a few times as well. But I've had concussions. Yeah, I've had concussions. I understand why the players in North America and the NHL and the NFL are doing these lawsuits. and getting settlement, absolutely. But it's more than just concussions. It's about all injuries and rushing players back before they're fully fit. So yeah, the Czech Kudicini double injury for Chelsea against Reading. That was a nightmare. And yeah, John Terry going in goal. Well, it's better than John Terry's in goal rather than you shagging your wife. So where would you want John Terry, in your goal or in your bed shagging your wife? That's where you want John Terry's in net, really. At least you can see what he's doing then. But no, yeah. On a serious note, yeah, I've had concussions. And the debate about CTE and player welfare has been ongoing for several years now in North America, and it's having an effect over here in Europe as well. Um, you know, yeah, yeah, I almost started a little with that. No, where would you rather have John Terry, in your team's net or in your bed fucking your wife? Um, and he gave that team talk before the Wales game, didn't he, for England? And look how that about leadership, and look how England fell apart. Interesting, that conspiracy theory much. But no, on the serious side of concussions, I've had a few. I've got friends who box and martial arts and play ice hockey. And yeah, I have. I mean, I've got friends who play rugby, ice hockey, football, you name it, boxing, mixed martial arts. I've got mates who do a variety of sports, and absolutely, head injuries are deadly serious. But injuries in general, and I look at the amount of players in all sports who are rushed back before they're fully fit. He swallowed his tongue. Well, God, that's not the only thing that's been swallowed probably by John Terry. The jokes that come out about John Terry and of a sexual nature, I'm gonna stop now. But no, I do remember he did get poleaxed badly, and yeah, choked on his tongue. He's not the only player. I remember Hugo Lloris for Tottenham a couple of seasons ago, getting knocked out. Who was it? Myler, the player who had to retire because he fractured his skull. I'm trying to remember. There was a whole player who had to retire because he got a fractured skull. There was. I remember years and years ago. I think I would go about 2001, 2002. I was at an FA Cup game between Brentford and Fulham, and there was a bad head clash. And my granddad went, "Oh no, the lad's faking." I went, "No, he's not." And a Fulham player and a Brentford player went for a header at Griffin Park at Brentford, and let's say the Brentford player didn't get up for about 15 minutes, and he was ended up in a severe condition in hospital. And my granddad was with me. He said, "Nah, he's dived. He's faking it." It's like, no, he's been dropped. He ain't getting up. He's not getting up, and he didn't, and it was serious. And he was very, very lucky that he only missed a couple of games after that, but he had a severe concussion. Who's the Arsenal keeper on loan? Is it Ospina? Playing for Napoli, had a head clash and collapsed. It's serious. Like, this is serious. This is not. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, look. You can be knocked out and not concussed, and you can be concussed without being knocked out or having a blow to the head. I mean, you can have a body shot and be concussed by the sheer whiplash going through your body. It's all about making sure the players aren't rushed back. I mean, you can't get rid of concussions from contact sports. I'm not saying you should, because otherwise you'd just be non-tackle league, and that would be pretty dull. But on my point of view, as someone who has played, I played with rugby with a torn thigh muscle. I played rugby with a shoulder injury for years from school age up to senior level, which has now got to the point where my back and neck are ruined. I've played on with concussions. Yeah, look, injuries happen, head injuries and other injuries. I think it's the rushing of players back to playing duties and training duties is wrong, and I think it's not just the head injuries. I think, yeah, the Eubanks, both father and son, absolutely. And I think the advice his son, Chris Eubank, gave his son when he was telling him to just hit him in the body, you hit him in the head, you'll kill him. The guy he was fighting, was a champion in his own right. And very early on in the fight, it was clear that Eubank had cut his eye open, he could barely see. The referee should have stopped it after about the third round. It went quite a distance. I think it went 10 rounds in that one. And his dad was saying, hit him in the body. You're going to kill him. The referee ain't going to stop this. I would have been of the opinion if I was in that corner, I would have gone to the other corner and say, "Look, throw the towel in. Your fight is in serious trouble here." But it got to the point where the guy had a bleed in his brain and he died, and had to retire. Yeah, there was what happened to Eubank in the early 90s. Yeah, there was the guy who he had a feud with, and it was a very public, and they didn't like each other very much, and he nearly killed him. It's terrifying how parallels are going here with the Eubanks. It's terrifying. Michael Watson, yeah, it's absolutely terrifying. The parallels between the father and son, and Barry McGuigan killed someone in the ring. You know, it's how the sport deals with it. If you clearly got, especially in boxing, if you've got an opponent who's clearly his legs are turning to jelly and he can't see, you stop the fight. For the love of God, that Eubank Junior fight, I forget who he was fighting, but the poor young lad, champion in his own right. And we shouldn't forget that he was a decent fighter himself, whose career's now ended. So that's his livelihood. You know, it was after the fight that he collapsed. He collapsed within about half hour after the fight, with a bleed on the brain, and he was very, very lucky to survive. And it's absolutely terrifying. I've had a friend who's had a bleed on the brain last year. Absolutely terrifying. My mate didn't realise he had a bleed on the brain for 5 days, collapsed, and he died in the pub. And I'm not joking. He nearly killed himself by not going to hospital. But no, the issue is rushing athletes back who are not fully fit, and then they, what. Yeah, there was a cheat. There was a guy who didn't put the full padding in his gloves and basically killed a guy. He got banned for that, though. I will admit he did get banned for that. But what was it? Talking about rushing athletes back who are not fully fit. Then there's the issue with addiction to painkillers, and then self-medicating on alcohol and recreational drugs to deal with the issues that are there, be it depression or physical pain, and the amount of really talented sportsmen who've taken their own lives. And I look at ice hockey because it's my favourite sport, and there are a fair few who've ended their lives in the last 10 years or died when they shouldn't have, died young. And it's a debate that's going on. And it's more than just head injuries, it's injuries in general. And them not being looked after properly, being rushed back before they're fit to train or play. It worries me, especially with how much they're paid. And the amount of money that's in professional sport. You can get a replacement player. He may not be the same player, maybe the same quality in team sports, but you can still fill out your roster. That's what youth squads are about. That's what reserve squads used to be about. Now they're trying to control the amount of players you can have in a squad. I think there are some serious concerns about player welfare, and it's more than just head injuries and concussions. And that's the debate that needs to be had going forward, because people go, "Oh, it's all about concussions." It's about the whole bloody lot, because you can go through your career, never get concussed, but you have to have 4 shoulder reconstructions and 2 knee reconstructions, and you're basically a cripple by the age of 30. You can ask Sam Warburton that. Great Welsh rugby player, same age as me. He retired because his shoulders and knees were wrecked, and he was told, you're going to be constantly having surgery for the rest of your life if you keep playing. I forget the amount of that. I think there was a football goalkeeper who was told he'd be on crutches by the time he was 35. The percentage is exceptionally high, especially with those who don't necessarily take their lives but suffer with mental health issues and the physical side of things. Many sportsmen don't have many injuries, but they struggle with depression post-sport because they're so used to that high-pressure environment and being under the spotlight for, let's say, 20 odd years, and being in front of thousands of people on a weekly, daily basis, that, when they retire, the quietness of retirement and the lack of not going to have to go to training, the lack of, I don't have a game this weekend, not being involved, they don't cope very, very well. So there needs to be better processes in place post-retirement. And with the amount of money in professional sport at the top level, they can pay these guys a decent pension, because they might get paid a good solid wage. That doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be financially prudent, especially some of these young players coming through who recklessly waste their money, who don't know. Some of them really recklessly spend their money like it's going out of fashion. It's like Jaromir Jagr, the famous ice hockey player. Now, he is now seen as the model professional. But in his younger days, when he first made it to the NHL, he racked up $300,000 in gambling debts. He racked up multiple speeding fines, and they asked him, "Why are you doing this?" He's like, "Because I can. Because I like to drive fast. Because I can." And you know, he wasn't very prudent with his money when he was young. When he got older, he's now seen as the model professional for ice hockey. But when he was in his 20s, he was reckless. Uh, um, so there needs to be better advice for the younger sportsmen coming through who get offered these big money contracts very young, some of them. I look at the NHL and some of these NHLers are, 21, 22, 23, much younger than me, and they're on multi-million dollar contracts per year. They earn more in like a week than I earn in 5 years. Football is a prime example. And it pisses me off when players like Danny Rose, who's on 50 grand a week, approximately from what we can gather from his contract, saying, "Nah, it's not enough money for me. I want to be on double that. I want 100 grand a week. 50 grand a week's not enough money for me. I don't think I can live on that." It's because he's seen rival players at rival clubs getting paid double him and thinks he's worth it. And I think to myself, you're earning more per week than I have in the last 5 years. And I say that truthfully. He earns more per week than I have in 5 years working in warehouses, factories, farm labouring, call centres. That's what sickens me is some of these players have earned some big money and haven't really done a lot. They kick a ball around for 90 minutes a week and go to training 3 times a week and kick a ball around for a couple of hours. That's what they do. And then they're spending it on these like expensive watches and cars and mansions and speedboats and stuff like that. And I think to myself, and you're complaining 50 grand a week, you can't live on that. Are you telling me 50 grand a week, you haven't saved a penny of that and you want more? So yeah, football is a prime example of how badly advised they are. And he took a lot of criticism for him coming out saying 50 grand a week is not enough. I think it's too much personally. Yeah, I was scraping by on 13 grand a year and saving up to rent a flat, and then I lost my job and all my savings have gone. I was on about, I would say, £13,500 a year before overtime at one of my jobs salary. He's on 50 grand a week. He earns in a week what it would take me working, I think, 3.5 years to earn. Something's gone wrong there. This is where football's gone wrong. If he was earning like £500,000 a year maximum or £1 million a year maximum, I wouldn't, and we knew, right, that's his annual salary, bang. There's a salary cap in place. I would be less pissed. The thing is, football has got to the point where they're out of control with the wages. The transfer market's out of control. The ticket price is out of control. The greed in the sport is killing it. And yeah, I cannot agree with the fact, even if he was on 10 grand a week, that's still about roughly what I'm earning in a year. And I think football's beyond saving at this point. I think it's lost where it's from. It's lost touch with its roots. I think it's losing touch with the fan base, the proper fans, not the gobby shites. I'm talking about the proper fans who've been going for 50 years with their families. It's like father like son. You go with your father and son, go to a game. The proper fans. I do think some of these players are on silly money, very young, don't know what to do with it, and you wonder why football players have a bad reputation for misbehaving, partying hard. Look at the amount of players who've got criminal records. What was it? It was a Doncaster player, I think, fired by his club for being found guilty of sexual assault or sexual misconduct this week. You got to look at it. You got to look at the amount of money they're paid and how badly advised they are. A lot of them didn't do well at school. A lot of them haven't got a lot of GCSEs or A levels. Not that they're thick; they just are more vocational rather than academic. So the school, they didn't do well, in their GCSEs or A levels because they're not book readers or that kind of intelligent. They're intelligent, but they're not intelligent in the sense of A level intelligent. Graham Lasso notwithstanding, and Graham Lasso is a very intelligent man, and he got bullied in the dressing room for reading the Telegraph and going to art galleries, and people thought he was gay. Uh, oh God, yeah. Yeah. If you imagine, I don't know how old you guys are. I mean, I'm 29. If I was on 50 grand a week at the age of 29, uh, I'll I'll be probably saving a lot of that. But you go back 10 years when I was 19, my dad died when I was 20, and I inherited a lot of money, and it went within 6 months. It was all gone. Spent a lot of it. So I've been there, done it, and that was with a lot less money. Um, so yeah, you can just imagine what a 20-year-old with. I mean, the most I've been on a month is just under £1.5 grand a month, and I couldn't afford to splash it all. I couldn't. Every job I've had, I've always made sure I've got money in the bank. Even when I'm out of work, I've got money in the bank. I've got money in the bank now. Not a lot. I've got enough to get through the next couple of weeks. But I suppose I've been around my family. I've had family give me advice, and I've made the mistake. They let me make the mistake once. I'm not going to make it again. I've made my mistake once. I've learned from that. But yeah, they definitely need better advice. They definitely need the clubs need to employ people to advise as financial advisors to these kids to tell them invest your money in savings, invest your money in the stock market or property, but don't spend it because you might retire at the age of 25 with a broken leg and you're not going to play again, and then the money dries up. You might be on a contract; they will let you pay out at the end of your contract, but once that contract's done, where's the money coming from? Absolutely, they need clubs need to have like guidance counselors and advisors actually in the clubs employed. If they do, they're not very public about it because the amount of players who've misbehaved and there's scandal and they buy these ostentation. I think was it Stephen Ireland painted his daughter's bedroom fluorescent pink and bought his wife a fluorescent pink car or something. It was gaudy as Robbie Savage with his glass house. Although Robbie Savage is actually an all right chap, I suppose. But you know what I mean. There are some players who've done some really crazy stuff, and there's a lot of players who've committed criminal offences, and it's partly because they're surrounded by people who are going to lead them down a dark path. Uh, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think then there needs to be some better guidance for these young lads coming into professional sport, not just football, but across the board. Because look at Zach Hardacre in rugby league. Here's a prime example of uh, Graham Massot, Chelsea and Blackburn legend. Thank you. Uh, Famously punched Gareth Batty in the face during a Champions League game and broke his hand. Yeah, now Graham Massot, very cultured individual, very intelligent, got a university degree, much like Martin O'Neill, the ex-Nottingham Forest and current manager of who is Martin O'Neill coaching right now. Martin O'Neill's managing someone. Martin O'Neill and Graham Massot are two of the football players who've got university degrees. They're ex-players now. Now Graham Massot has gone into the media, and Martin O'Neill has gone into management, which is his prerogative. Both have university degrees. And Graham Massot especially because he was at Chelsea. Now Chelsea is a club that's got a really bad reputation for homophobia, racism, sexism, the whole lot. Chelsea's a toxic club, and I've said that for years. Not every Chelsea fan is. I've got a lot of Chelsea fans who are subscribers to the channel. But Graham Massot in his first spell at Chelsea, it came out because he was playing with Dennis Wise. That's enough said about who he was playing with. I think Vinnie Jones played at Chelsea for a brief period. You got to look at his teammates. Dennis Wise, he's an arsehole. Let's not kid ourselves about Dennis Wise. And Dennis Wise, obviously on England duty, made it be known to other players that Graham Massot was gay. Graham Massot is not gay. Graham Massot is actually one of the most attractive wives you'll ever meet and is happily married with kids and is a family man. But Dennis Wise spread the rumour that Graham Massot was gay. Other clubs picked up on that, and Graham Massot took abuse from Robbie Fowler, especially homophobic abuse, and Graham Massot took it and won the Premier League where Robbie Fowler didn't. Oh yeah, Dennis Wise on how I'm a Celebrity made himself look like an absolute tit, absolute cock. But that's Dennis Weisby. I've met the man; he's a prick. I've met Graham Masoi; he's a very nice man. No, Graham Masoi, he took all this homophobic abuse for years because he was intelligent. He was basically bullying. And obviously Fashion's brother, from the Crazy Gang, there were two Fashion brothers. One killed himself because he was the only openly gay footballer at the time, and the other one went on to present Gladiators. Has come out saying, "I wish I'd actually supported my brother because he killed himself." The Fashion brothers. One was gay, one was straight. One was worth £1 million and played for Nottingham Forest, and one won the FA Cup with the Crazy Gang. The Norwich one. Yeah, I think it was Jonathan Fashanu. His brother went on to present Gladiators with Eureka Johnson. He wished he hadn't, allowed his brother to be homophobically abused as much as he was. Bear in mind, racism was a thing at the time as well. Apparently, racism was really popular and fashionable for people to do, and throw bananas at black people because white people don't eat bananas, do they? But he's come out and said he wished he, at the time, because of the racism as well, he felt he couldn't. But yeah, his brother took some brutal abuse, and that's why. And people wonder why there's no real. I think there's one openly gay rugby. I think is it union or league player. There's a couple of openly gay cricketers, and that's it. All the others are ex-players, like Thomas Hitzlsperger, ex-player. Gareth Thomas, rugby player, ex-player, but he was the only openly gay player at the time. They were both fostered by white foster parents, yes. Both fostered. They were Barnardo's kids. They came through the Barnardo's care system. They were helped by the Barnardo's charity. I seem to remember, because when I was a kid, the Barnardo's did an advert, and both Fashion brothers were in it. It was an old advert they kept replaying, but they were fostered. They came through Barnardo's. They didn't have the easiest upbringing, which was very sad. It is very sad. Their upbringing was very sad. I have seen the Crazy Gang documentary. I've seen lots of documentaries about football over the years, and I've seen the Crazy Gang one is hilarious. It's sad as well. It's very sad, but also hilarious. There are some really funny things and some very sad things about that period in football. And what else was I talking about? No, but the Fasci brothers, yeah, they were fostered. It's a sad story, their family. It's just a very, very sad story. It is sad. And one of them took his own life. So yeah, mental health, sexuality. I'm thinking about Thomas Hitzlsperger came out as gay the year after he retired. Gareth Thomas, the rugby union, rugby league player, came out as gay while still playing, and he was very brave to do so. And he suffered homophobic. He suffered a homophobic assault last year, which he was very open about. And I took this abuse from this lad, and I think the lad forgot what Gareth Thomas used to do for a living, which was smash the living crap out of people on a rugby pitch. And it's sad, but it's there. There's a couple. I think there was a couple of gay cricket players, and there's I think a gay golfer. There's not many. There's a reason why. It's because of what happened to people like Fashanu. You got to look at what's happening in football stadiums up and down the country right now, and to a certain extent, rugby league stadiums. You've got to have a look at it to see it. There's a reason why there are no openly gay ice hockey players. There's a reason why there's no openly gay NFL players. There's a reason why there's no gay MLB player. There is still a culture there's still a nasty culture there. Lawrie Sanchez is interesting because his mother was from Northern Ireland, his dad was from Ecuador, and he's got a Cockney accent. Yeah, Lawrie Sanchez and Fashu hated each other. Lawrie Sanchez was again more intelligent than your average football player. When I say intelligent, he did well at school. Lawrie Sanchez, I haven't met him, but I've met players who played with him, and yeah, he's different. He comes across as a bit more down to earth and with it. The Crazy Gang, they did some really crazy stuff. But Lawrie Sanchez is an interesting character in his own right, and they should do a documentary on his upbringing because he's from a very, very mixed background. Got a bit of native Indian in him from South America as well because his father. So he's an interesting character with his ethnic background, and he's mixed race, and it's interesting. But the Crazy Gang was you wouldn't have a team like the Crazy Gang now. You wouldn't have a team like AFC Wimbledon now. Not with how professional sport is. Um, it's a shame because I do like sport with characters. I don't like these bland PC, dull, monotone interviews. So when Charlie Austin lost his crap before Christmas about VAR, it was a breath of fresh air because he was speaking his mind. I miss players and managers talking their mind because they get fined for it, which I think is wrong. I think they should be allowed to air their opinions and their concerns about the sports that they play in. It's kind of fun. And when um, you I think we've gone too stale. We're too PC. We're too choreographed. They're media coached now. I like characters in sport. It's what makes sport fun. This is why Freddie Flintoff is such an interesting character. I've met him. He's a really interesting character. He's not my favourite cup of tea anymore. There are certain things about Freddie Flintoff I don't like, but he's a character. You don't get that anymore. You just don't get it. And yeah, there are a couple of characters in sport that make you chuckle because I suggest you look at NHL coach John Tortorella. He regularly just blows up in press conferences. He's chilled out as time has gone on, but he's I think one of the characters left in professional sport. Brian Moore. I'm not a big fan of Brian Moore, but he's a character. He says what he thinks. But his Twitter feed is interesting because he seems to think he knows what he's talking about politics, but actually he's just an arsehole when it comes to that. But he does make me chuckle because while I'm not a big fan of Brian Moore, he is a character, and you're not going to get that every day, really. Neil Warnock, I can't stand Neil Warnock, but he is a character, but he's such a hypocrite, it's unreal. But Neil Warnock is an interesting one because I wonder how many fines he's got from the FA for improper conduct. There are a couple out there. Stuart Pearce used to make me chuckle when he was Man City manager with some of his rants, and they said to him, "You can't say that. You're on a TV interview." He's like, "I don't care. I'm telling you the truth. If you want to ask me a question, I'll give you a straight answer." And that's what I like about. I think we are making it too stale and too corporate and too, too PC. I think Oh God, yeah, no, Neil Warnock when he does retire, sport for me it's going to be a quieter place because I can't go. This guy's a lunatic. He's one of those managers, much like John Tortorella in the NHL, who make me chuckle. I like Torts though because Torts says how it is, and I think I agree with what he says. There seems to be a trend with these German managers coming over, being a bit less PC and a little bit more open and a bit more like Klopp. Wagner was like it as well. Managers who coach in the Bundesliga seem to be different with the media. They seem to be a bit more fun and a bit more relaxed and less shitty. I think we need more of that kind of style of press conference where they're a bit more relaxed and it's just like, let's just talk about what we've got to talk about and be relaxed because at the end of the day, like what the last one said about needing time off. Very, very. Wasn't that Steve Bruce who took some time off after taking the Sheffield Wednesday job? I know Steve Bruce agreed to the Wednesday job and took time off until the beginning of February, and he was criticised for that. And then his son, Alex Bruce, came out and ripped the arseholes a new arsehole. I think we have to look at the pressure we put on. I mean, these managers, their job security is nil. David Wagner. Look, he's coached in the Bundesliga. He's coached in the Premier League. I think, I don't blame him. I don't blame him in the slightest. I can see him actually going back to coach at Huddersfield in the future as well. I can actually see him coming back to Huddersfield later on down the line at some point. But Hussein Hartel, ex-Leipzig manager, now manager Southampton, again, very open, very affable with the media, very relaxed, very calm. It seems to be coaches that have coached in the Bundesliga seem to come off really, really well. Coaches who coach in the Liga are very aggressive in their press conferences. I can't stand Guardiola. I can't stand him. I could never stand Mourinho, although he was just, what's he going to say next? Oh, wait, no, he's thrown his team under the bus. It's Mourinho. Some of the Italian managers were quite interesting. I I like Ancelotti. I liked Ancelotti because it's just the way he came across. Carlo Ancelotti was, when you've got to put him in a press conference, was brilliant. Um, but no, there are. I think sport is becoming very, very politically correct and very stale and very stage managed when it comes to press conferences. And when Charlie Austin blew up this season for Southampton, I forget who they were playing, but it was like it was refreshing. I think that, but the German league, they put on the press conferences that the managers are far more open. They're far more open and relaxed with the media. The clubs are run differently. There's a more open, transparent nature about the football in Germany, with the running of the clubs being owned by the fans for the most part. The fans have a lot of say in how the sport is run, and the managers are very, very open. The style of football is similar, but the way the managers come across, they're less crappy with the media. They're less aggressive. They might get aggressive on the touchline during a game, but actually, when all is said and done, when they're giving their press conferences, they have a sense of humour. They're very relaxed. They're very open. They allow the media to ask their questions, and they will give answers as best as possible. Or they'll say, "Look, I'm not answering that. I'm moving on to this," but they'll do it in a way where you respect their answer. I think we could learn a lot from how the Germans conduct themselves when it comes to football. I think absolutely can learn a lot. I think the style of football is very similar, so they adjust their tactics. But Watford, the VAR rant, it's brilliant. I think I was pissing myself laughing, but it's the way halfway through the rant when he's screaming and shouting, he calms down and goes standard. He's like VAR this, VAR that. They're struggling, standard. It's just, and he was actually born down the road from me. He was born up the road from where I live now. So he's a local lad to Berkshire. He's a Berkshire lad. He was, I think, born in Reading, so he's local to my local area where he was born. And it was refreshing to see him just say it how it was. He's clearly frustrated. I think the opposition were equally frustrated on that game because there was VAR decisions that went both ways. That could have gone both ways if VAR had been used in that game. And he said it how it was. And the fact that the FA were charging him after that is like, no, you guys in the FA need to look at the fact that you're experimenting with this VAR system and you're getting it wrong. You've got to listen to the players. The players are the ones that it affects with decisions. The clubs, the fans, and the managers. Absolutely. I think they've misused it in the FA Cup quarterfinals because Man City have got through when, had there been VAR, they would have been knocked out by Swansea City. It was one rule for the richer clubs, one rule for the poorer clubs. I don't think that's right. I think the FA, if they're serious about experimenting, they need to pump up some of the cash for the use and implementation of VAR. So that's cost Swansea City a place in the semi-finals. Man City got lucky in that game because there was no VAR. Had there been VAR, Sterling's penalty was a dive. Come on, he's barely touched him. I have my views on Sterling. And Aguero's header was offside. So, how am I a Blackburn fan in Berkshire? No one knows. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. No one knows. I don't know. My family don't know. I don't know. Well, but my granddad's a Burnley fan. So you work that one out. Like, I don't know. My other granddad's a Liverpool, or was a Liverpool fan before he passed away. So I don't know. It's my answer. I don't know. Just is, isn't it? But the thing is, I have concerns about my club. Our form has dropped off a cliff the last month and a half, and we're very close to the wrong end of the table, and we're owned by idiots. It's interesting because my biggest playlist on the channel for videos done is football. Absolutely, it's the most popular sport in the world, but it's you don't sound northern. You're not from round here. I have got links with the north of England. My dad's family on his dad's side are from Liverpool and Lancashire. My mum's family got links to the Midlands, so I'm a bit of a mongrel, really, when it comes to my ancestry. But no, you could say that joke. You're not from round here. Yeah, I accept that. No, but I've been supporting the club for a very, very long time, since I was a toddler. Actually, it's to do with my dad and my dad's love of sport while he was alive. It was a sporty upbringing, let's just say. my dad played non-league football for Dorchester Town, so at the end of the day, look, yeah, we have taken a dive from like what we were high as 8th at one point, edge of playoffs. Yeah, we've dropped a fair bit, and we have hit some rocky form. But I don't think we're going to get relegated. The fact we are a promoted team, we weren't expected to be as high as we were. I think there is some fresh shoots to build on for next season, depending if we can keep players like Bradley Dack, and we'll go from there. But it's the ownership that concerns me. It is the ownership that concerns me. I think if oh God, look, we're more than 10 points clear of the relegation zone. I'm not concerned about where we are as such, but I'm concerned with our loss in form so rapidly. It would have been nice to be A, higher up the table for the prize money, and B, possibly getting to playoffs. I think it's a season too soon. I think we have to build for next year, but the concern is, for me, is the ownership. The ownership has been nothing short of chaotic for over a decade, and it's damaged the club's brand and reputation, and financially has damaged the club massively. We've got massive debts at Blackburn, so it's deeply concerning going forward, and I think the ownership needs to change. But that's my view on the situation there. I've got nothing else to really add apart from, we have slipped down the table massively. Yeah, we have had a massive loss in form. We haven't had a win in over a month. It would be nice to get a couple of wins and just get back up the table a little bit, but we can all hope, can't we? I think next season's going to be different. I think we'll have to see what happens, but we've got enough to stay up. With what happened, well, we don't know what's going to happen with Bolton yet, or Birmingham. So that could severely change how things look at the bottom of the table. If those clubs get points deductions, it changes how the table looks. It changes the league position of a lot of clubs. It jumbles it all around, and then it's up in the air, then, isn't it? And that's something the EFL they need to govern the game a lot better for the Football League. The FA as a whole need to govern the game better. The Premier League needs to govern the game. All the governance side of the game in the UK is in up creek. It's not good enough, and there are so many issues with the governance of football in the UK. It's deeply concerning. And as me, and I am. Birmingham are in trouble. It's to do with part to do with their like some of the dealings with their previous transfer embargo and administration that they were faced with, and previous things that were agreed upon. The club have had issues off the field for quite some time. There was a transfer embargo in place, I believe, at one point. They broke that. They breached that. They weren't fully clear about registering some players. There's a lot going on. I'm not fully up to tune with the full side of things, but there is a lot happening off the field with Birmingham that is concerning, and they could be faced with a 12-point deduction, which would leave them 2 points above the drop zone. I believe a place above the drop zone, something like that. There's something to do with transfers and breaching of transfer rules, and a transfer embargo that was on the club a couple of years ago. So there are some issues with Birmingham that are very complex, similar to what Chelsea have got now with their transfer ban. Some very complex issues, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of days. I believe Birmingham are trying to fight the charges against them by the Football League, but the Football League have poorly governed the game for a long time in the Championship, League One and League Two. It's the governance of football has been a joke for a long time. Look at the amount of clubs that have been badly run, that really been threatened with administration, or have had money issues, or bad ownership. It's been an issue for a long time. So at the end of the day, there are issues with Birmingham, but I'm waiting to see what actually happens, and I've got to do a bit of research on that because it's a very complex situation with Birmingham City. They're not the most comfortable things to wear on like a 2-hour video, as I'm finding out. It's digging into my head up here, but on shorter videos, I think it improves the sound quality. I'm still experimenting. Of course, I've had a few updates on the laptop, so actually it sounds better now than when I first did the experiment at the end of last year. The sound quality is better. There's less buzzing. The background noise is reduced. But at the moment, I don't know. I'm still 50-50, but the microphone on this is better than the microphone on my laptop. But down the line, I want to get a better webcam and a separate standalone microphone that will pick up sound better than this headset, because this headset is exceptionally uncomfortable to wear. I'm not gonna lie, it might have the leather bit, but it digs into my head, and when it digs into your head, it gets uncomfortable to wear for more than 5-10 minutes. And if you're doing a live stream like this, it does start to hurt your head, and it doesn't actually affect me writing on the whiteboard though. So I was a bit concerned that the cable will get tangled up and putting notes on the board. It hasn't actually affected that as much as I thought it would, but I'm still not 100% happy. The sound quality is better than what it was when I last experimented with the headset, hence why I'm continuing using it. I had some issues with the laptop, had some issues with the sound card failing towards the end of last year that I had to get fixed. So that was one of the reasons why I was looking at the headset. But I might try and find a better headset if I can. This one is my Xbox headset, and after a while, it gets uncomfortable to wear it. And then when you take it off, your ear adjustment, it's weird when you take it off. It's like this right now. It sounds so different than like that. Like that, it sounds like I'm underwater. So it takes a while to get used to using it, and when you take it off and your hearing readjusts, it's really weird for the first hour or so. But it is what it is. But I'm going to leave that there, almost dead on 2 hours, because almost the second, because I need to get a cup of tea and see if my vape's charged up, because I need some nicotine. So I'm going to leave that there. Thank you very much for all your questions. We've had a lot of things to discuss. There's a lot of things being discussed, and a lot of serious topics have been brought up. So that's been nice to see that we've had some really, really serious questions there. I'm going out this evening, so I might do a couple more videos on the channel today. I might give it a break for the rest of the day. We will see. But at the moment, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate all your questions, really appreciate the discussion we've had, and I'll have some more videos for you soon, so keep your eyes open for what's popping up on the channel, and bye for now.